All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 4 is an update on the transition from mental health regions to behavioral health districts in Iowa with May Hinton of CEO of Mental Health, I'm reading here, sorry, getting ahead of my CEO of Mental Health and Disability Services of the East Central Region, and Lori Elam, CEO of Eastern Iowa Mental Health and Disability Services Region. A lot of stuff this morning. Morning, Lori and May.
That was a mouthful for a
Yeah,
Monday morning. So
it is.
thank you for having us this morning. We've taken our show on the road and we've gone to almost all 14 counties talking about the transition from mental health regions to districts. You have a map in front of you. So this past legislative session, the bill was passed for, again, another redesign. For those of you who have been around over the years, there seems to be a redesign of the mental health system every 10 to 11, 12 years. And so this is the new system, behavioral health districts. We are number 7, we're the TAN, and we are in essence merging with the East Central region, and then picking up 3 other counties, Louisa, Des Moines, and Black Hawk County. We are the largest district, a little over 1 million people. So May and I, we are collaborating, working very closely together. We have been for years, but we wanted to come and talk and make sure that we've answered any questions or concerns you may have about this transition. I know Supervisor Sorensen sits on the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Governing Board, and so he's heard a lot of this before, and I know he comes up with good questions every time. So it's a transition, and a little nerve-wracking as we're moving forward. There's an RFP that came out September 1, and it is due October 18th, so this Friday. And we've been working on all of the narratives and the attachments, putting that all together, and that will be submitted on time. And the RFP is for the ASO, the Administrative Service Organization. And I'm going to have May talk a little more about that. She's also handing out a timeline and kind of a summary of what the districts are expected to do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to May, and if you have questions, please stop us at any point and we'll answer any questions you may have.
All right, good morning. As Supervisor Sorensen said, my name is May Hinchin. You're close.
Hinchin, close.
You're close. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm the CEO for the Mental Health and Disability Services of the East Central Region. I have been there this week. I've been there 5 years. So I had a little fun coming to Muscatine today, and I was through here a couple of weeks ago when we went to Louisa County as well. I grew up in Northwest Iowa. I had never been to Muscatine in my life. But 2 weeks ago when we came through here, I remembered that when I was in college, my best friend married a boy from Muscatine, and his father worked for Han. So I was like, oh yeah, now I have some context, right? I have some familiarity. So as Lori said, the HHS and the state legislator seems to realign or redesign the MHDS system about every 10 years. If you're really old enough to remember Senate File 69 back in 1995, that created the MHDS system. At that time, I was named the central point of coordination back when we had those in Cherokee County, Iowa, way in Northwest Iowa. So I've been around this system for a long time. 18 years ago, my family and I moved to Dubuque. I went to school at Iowa State, fell in love with a boy from Bellevue, Iowa, who had never been to the flatlands of Northwest Iowa, and I had never been to the Mississippi. So we expanded each other's geography, I guess. So just a little bit about me. For the last 2 years, the East Central region has been very specific and very intentional about priorities legislatively. And one of the things that was really important to us was that the state of Iowa combine mental health and substance use funding and policy. To be really honest with you, I went to a national conference about 3 years ago, and I found out how far behind we are in Iowa, in the country, and what people do, the other states do to combine mental health and substance use services, because as we know, people often experience both. And so we started advocating for that combination of the policy and the funding, and we did a few things that we could do within the confines of the law, because right now the mental health and disability services regions are forbidden to pay for substance use treatment under the law. And so we do a lot of prevention, we do a lot of education, we've been trying to build our capacity for that work. And so on January 10th, when the governor announced her intention to combine the MHDS regions with the Iowa Provider Network, that system that provides substance use services, and to combine the policy and funding, I cheered, right? Because I was really happy about that. It's something that we've been working for a few years. And then, the whole thing about there will be fewer MHDS regions. They will take essentially 32 different areas. At that time, 13 MHDS regions and 19 Iowa Provider Network areas, the substance use areas, and combine them into 7 behavioral health districts. It created a lot of anxiety for a lot of us. Like, what does this actually mean? Will there be space for all of us, right? And so during legislative session, kind of everything that happened with that, obviously the bill passed, the bill was signed. I had the great pleasure of being there. The bill was signed in the East Central region. The governor came to one of our providers to sign the bill, and we still didn't know a lot, right? Because the bill said, and you see the timeline, right, that HHS would release a transition plan on July 1st. They would release the map on August 1st. And then that's really all we knew from legislation, other than, 2 other dates, that they would name the administrative services organizations on December 31st of this year, and that MHDS regions, as we are right now, will cease to exist on June 30th of 2025. So Iowa Code 225C that governs the MHDS regions sunsets on June 30th of this fiscal year, so next June. And then 225A, a new code section, will sunrise, if you will, on July 1st. So in our region, I don't sit still real well. So we spent the time from April until June doing what we called an interim plan. We said, what do we need to do? We always had the intention of applying to be the administrative services organization. And so I got my staff together, and we did a lot of research into, like, what are the services, what are the needs, how many people are we serving, how many providers do we have contracts with, those types of things. But one of the really important things for us was, what are the relationships that we have within our region, and let's talk to those people and see what they need. So during the months of May and June, we had focus groups with law enforcement, healthcare, substance use providers, our traditional providers, education, just to ask them, like, what do you think you need? What are you excited about? What are you concerned about? What kind of hopes do you have for a future system? And we always had the intent that as soon as the map was released on August 1st, which was HHS's plan and legislatively directed, that we would repeat that process in whatever map we ended up in. So the East Central region right now is the largest MHDS region in the state. We have 608,000 people that live in our region. We have 9 counties. On August 1st, when this map was released, my first text was to Lori. I was like, hey, we need to talk, because obviously we see that essentially our regions are being put together. We lose in the East Central region, we lose 3. We lose Bremer, Benton, and Iowa counties. So Bremer County goes to 3, to the district that's named number 3, the purple on your map. Benton and Iowa go to 4, 5, 6, the dark blue, and the southeast Iowa. So that was really hard for us. We have a strong region. We are the same 9 counties that we've been for 10 years. And I think we all knew that there was the likelihood that we wouldn't all 9 of us stay together, but it was still pretty sad when that map came out. So we're going through some transitioning and some pain of letting our partners in those 3 counties go, but also then, of course, Lori and I started traveling around the state, well, around this, the Brown region there, district number 7. So at one point, I think it was mid-August, Lori said, May, I've counted it up, and we've added 31 meetings to our calendars, and that was like 2 weeks in. So I think we were closer to 35 that we added since August. So again, that intent of going around and just building relationships and asking people, what do you need from the administrative services organization? What are your, kind of your future goals, and what is your plan for District 7? The administrative services organization is the entity that will administer behavioral health services. So again, we have the combination of mental health and substance use. We have the opportunity here to be the instrumentality of the state, is what it's called, that federal mental health and substance use block grant dollars will flow through from the state through the ASO to the providers. So we understand that we'll have greater contracting responsibilities as the administrative services organization because of those flow-through dollars. We don't know what a budget will look like. We have zero idea. HHS has indicated that the funding formula and the distribution of the funding will happen, will be figured out, likely after the administrative services organizations are named. So when they released their transition plan on July 1st, they gave us a couple more dates. The dates that you see on that timeline as well, September 30th, that they would release the request for proposals for the administrative services organizations, and that they would release the request for proposals for what they're calling the disability access point. A couple things have happened since July 1st when that came out. Number one, they surprised us with the ASO RFP, sorry, there's so many acronyms, Administrative Services Organization Request for Proposals. It was released on September 1st. So Lori and I had all these meetings scheduled, and we thought, oh, it's gonna come out September 30th, and we'll probably have 6 weeks to write it, so we have all this time to go around and have these meetings and build relationships. Well, it came out September 1st, and woo, surprise. We do have 6 weeks, which means it's due Friday. We also know that November 18th or 19th, we will be notified if we're invited to do a presentation about our proposal. Those presentations will be November 20th or 21st, so we might get 24 hours, we might get 48 hours notice. What that tells me is as soon as that proposal goes in on Friday, we have to start working on the presentation because we're gonna have very short notice in order to be able to deliver that presentation. And then HHS has indicated that they will designate the administrative services organizations on December 30th. So they moved it up one day. I would assume they would like to have New Year's Eve off. So they will make the announcement on December 30th with contracts intended to begin on January 1st. We all question that. I assume we will see a contract mid-January, but it'll be backdated to January 1st. So it will be effective January 1st. So we have a 6-month time period once the administrative services organizations are named. Clearly, as you know from what I've talked about, we are applying. We will be grateful if we are named the administrative services organization, but we also know that there's a likelihood that we will not. And we have some pretty strong commitments to making sure that the system transitions from January to June, and that if we're not named the ASO, that we're good partners for those that are. My 2 biggest priorities in that time period from January to June are that people continue to receive services, right? When 225C sunsets on 6/30 and 225A sunrises on 7/1, that people continue to receive services and that providers continue to get paid. So there's our contracting authority, both of us as regions, our contracting authority ceases to exist next June 30th. And so we need to have that period of time from January to June where we're standing up contract authority so that seamlessly, people can continue to get services and providers can still have some place to bill, right? So, there's a lot of work to be done with the transition. Right now, we're just mostly focused on getting that proposal written. Lori and I made a decision, I would say maybe about a month ago, probably about as soon as the RFP came out, that because the East Central region is the larger region, our staff capacity, that we would be the official applicant, so that we were only allowed in the documentation, the whole process in the state procurement to apply as one organization. So MHDS of the East Central region is the official applicant. We have already, and perhaps Supervisor Sorensen reported about 3 weeks ago now, we had a joint meeting of both of the regional governing boards, and we invited members from Black Hawk County, Louisa, and Des Moines counties as well. Lori and I have gotten our staff together. We've had joint staff meetings. And so even though the East Central region is the official applicant, we're really looking at this more as like a partnership and collaboratively moving forward. I have, created a table of organization, and she was the first person I shared it with. She saw it way before my staff did, and it's just we're just working together. As Lori said, we've done so for years, and we see this as a really great opportunity for just expansion of services. The Eastern Iowa region designates the 2 access centers in the East Central region as your access centers anyway. We share a mobile crisis provider. This year, just kind of right now, the East Central region has a contract with Foundation 2 to employ dispatch software. It will help to create the mobile crisis response dispatch more quickly, more efficiently. And we entered into that contract with Foundation 2. Seemed like it was after the map came out, because we knew we were going to be, it was maybe July or August, right around that time. And the East Central Region Governing Board approved my proposal for us to pay for it in the Eastern Iowa region too. So it was just like, hey, we're going to be together. We use the same provider anyway. And so we're paying for that to be employed here in the Eastern Iowa region too. And it just makes sense with the provider. So a lot of work to be done, to be sure, and a lot of things to figure out. A lot of them that we don't know yet because we haven't seen a contract from HHS. We have some ideas from the RFP about the scope of the work of the Administrative Services Organization, but like I said, we don't even have a budget yet. So we'll be figuring that out if we're named the ASO in that period from January to June. It makes some of us who have been in county government for a really long time nervous, because we start budgeting in November, November and December, and we're not going to know. We don't know what we're working with as far as a budget. We do know that the Administrative Services Organization is limited by code to a 7% administrative cap, and that it's 7% of what, first of all. And the other thing is, how do they define administrative services? What's administrative? What's actual service management? There's just some definitions that we need yet. But I will say that in the East Central region, our administrative costs right now are at 8%. And so when that bill came out, I wasn't real worried about 7%. I actually think there are a couple of my staff that right now we code as administrative that could be service, that would put us at about 7%. So I'm not terribly worried about that 7% administrative cap. I think we can do it.
May, what role remains for the regions, statutorily speaking?
None.
So what entity will actually be the ASO?
So what we are, thanks for asking that, because I left all of that out. We had a committee in the East Central region, and then once the map came out, we blended in Lori and David Farmer. We had a subcommittee to talk about the structure of the ASO, because the bill allows for 2 eligible entities to apply. An MHDS region, who is in effect as far as June 30th of this year, and a nonprofit organization. And so I spent a lot of time with our attorney and with our lobbyist. I met with the executive directors of both the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque and the Greater Cedar Rapids Foundation, because they really know nonprofits. Spent some time at the University of Iowa on their website. I can't remember the name of it now, but they've got a website for nonprofits. And talking with Lori and our subcommittee, and our subcommittee identified some priorities. And the priorities were the ability, I'm pretty active at the Capitol during session, and they wanted me as well as them to still be able to lobby. They wanted to take care of our staff, And so namely, one of the things that we considered, of course, was IPERS, because we have a lot of staff who are IPERS eligible, and we wanted to kind of unify a staff structure. So the subcommittee met 3 times and has come forward with the recommendation that we shared at that joint meeting, that we will remain a 28E agreement rather than switching to a nonprofit status. And so if we are named the ASO, we'll be working on a new 2080 agreement between January and June as well.
What will be the public element of that 28E if the regions no longer effectively exist?
So according to the 2080 law in Iowa, there has to be a representative board.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we talked about a little bit at the joint retreat. And we don't really know how we feel about a 14-member board, but perhaps there are opportunities for rotational representation that, things that we have to work out, and yeah, we'll figure that out
But
if we're
so
named
that-
the ASO.
But it wouldn't be. I guess what I'm struggling with is it doesn't sound like that there would be a statutorily organized public entity that would serve as the public component of this, unless are you proposing some sort of a joint county venture? Is that what the 28E would be?
Yeah, that's what a
So
2080
no-
agreement is. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the joint county venture, we've also had discussion about, and these are things, I want to back up just a little bit because in the request for proposals, it says expressly that potential bidders may not share any information about the content of their bid directly or indirectly with other bidders. So I can't really talk about the substance of our RFP, but these questions are not related because we don't have to identify this in the RFP. So I feel comfortable talking about that with you.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have had conversations about 2080 organizing as a 2080, an agreement between public entities with consideration of likely three different, just for equity and disbursement arrangements with 3 different counties, one for IT, one for employment, and one for fiscal agent. So that would be another kind of component of that public entity that you're asking about.
So each of these constituent, 14 counties, as part of a 2080 joint venture, would their taxpayers ultimately be on the hook for liabilities incurred by the ASO?
That's a question that's come up a few times, and I don't know. I'd let our attorney answer this for sure, but I would say not any more than currently the counties are in the current 2080 agreement. Our system is state funded, and so it all comes from state funding. And in addition, both of our regions currently are members of the Iowa Community Assurance Pool for liability insurance. And so
But right now, counties have taxing authority, even if it's only pass through, to fund those liabilities. There would be no, as I understand it, source of public funding to fund the ASO's operations other than that 7% administrative fee.
none of that would be county funded, though. That's all still state funded.
Right, there'd be no funding mechanisms for counties to protect themselves in this proposed organizational entity.
I think it's the exact same scenario as what we're in right now.
Okay.
We've been state funded for 2 years, and the counties don't tax to protect themselves for the
Okay.
MHDS regions right now. So I
Right.
don't know that changes.
Okay.
As far as a new expanded 2080 doesn't necessarily change the current structure.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct in thinking that? I
Yeah.
believe if I know you're an attorney, so maybe you can help me.
Well, no, that's my understanding of it. I'm
Yeah.
not an expert on this and don't
Yeah.
claim to be using my attorney knowledge for the benefit of the county or any organization, so I'm just
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
questions.
Maybe you could share with the board, the suitors to be ASOs across the state.
Of course, yeah.
Kind of the
Thanks for asking that.
breadth of providers and what we know about who may be also competing, because I think our concerns all along is mine has been with this, is who's gonna be interested in being an ASO, and are there organizations that would have the competency to provide services and continue what we've got done, so maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Thankfully, state procurement process, they can make that public information. So I think I found out on a Wednesday, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know how long ago that was. And the news actually hit the internet on Friday, but there were 10 organizations statewide that issued letters of intent to bid. So we had to issue a letter of intent to bid by September 18th. And of those organizations, is it three or is it four? Four submitted intents, intents to bid for District 7, which we are. So us, MHDS of the East Central Region, Elevate Housing. So Elevate is a provider that is primarily located in Blackhawk County. They're also in Illinois. Their corporate office is in Illinois, and they have some services. Oh, they have mobile crisis response in Des Moines and Louisa counties. So they have, some presence in District 7. And then we also have 2 organizations, well, Elevate did as well, 2 other organizations that submitted an intent to bid for all 7 districts. Like they're gonna apply statewide according to their intent to bid. One of them is Unity Point Health, and the other one was the Iowa Primary Care Association. I had never heard of the Primary Care Association until this happened. So, that day, I think Lori was in my office and we were Googling. It's the Federally Qualified Health Center Network in Iowa. So
It's like the MCOs all over again.
a bit, yeah. So that's what we're up against. As I told my staff the day that this news came out, this does not change our intention. This does not change our trajectory. Yes, we will highlight areas in the proposal where we think we're a better option than our competitors, but we still have the intention to be the administrative services organization. When the governor made her announcement and we started seeing drafts of the bill, Lori and I would go to statewide CEO meetings, and there was one or two of our colleagues who said, y'all, we don't have to all be the ASO. Like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to create a niche, and then you are all going to contract with me if you're the ASOs, right? Like, there are other paths forward for us. And I went back to my staff, and twice I said to my staff, what is it that we do well? What do we do really well? And is there a niche for us that perhaps we should focus on some other development rather than being the ASO? Like, that's not our only path. And we did a lot of soul searching, and we went through that conversation twice, and we really kind of came up with what we do well is administration. We're the largest region in the state, and because of that, we have a lot of systems set up because we've had to, because of the number of resources and the amount of our budget, the number of people that we serve, the number of providers that we have in our network. We do administration well. And so we have focused on that. Like, what do? We do well, and that's what we're going to talk about in our proposal.
So one thing we might want to talk a little bit about was the Unity Point Health applied to be an ASO, and we, the Eastern Iowa region, Robert Young Center and Unity Point Trinity has been a long-standing and pretty involved partner in our region. And when the bidding process for the RFQ, you were strictly forbidden to communicate with other suitors, and that caused a bit of an issue. I don't think we initially started, and I think even Unity Point Trinity did not believe that they were going to pursue the ASO designation. So that has caused a bit of an issue for us.
Well, and Abbey Health is the second largest community mental health center in the state, and they're in the East Central region, and a strong, holy moly, strong partner with us. So I probably talk to the executive director from Abbey Health at least once a week, and now it's in this awkward position where we can't talk, and we were like, okay, any of our conversation is limited to the tasks at hand, this year's work. We can't talk about the proposal. We can't talk about future state. So, and then Lori and I had met, maybe a week before the RFP came out that expressly prohibited us from having conversations with other bidders in order to prevent competition. Lori and I had met with Tom Ekus, who is the executive director of Blackhawk Grundy Mental Health Center in Waterloo. they're also part of the Unity Point network. So some partners that we were expecting to kind of be there with us through this path of proposal and ASO designation were truncated.
Is this a one and done bid?
Yes.
Or, so once the ASO, always the ASO, until they decide to reorganize everything?
Or unless they terminate the contract, but it's not, it is every year. It's not like we're gonna do a procurement every 3 years. Once you've been named ASO, you are until they have reason to terminate if you don't comply, or they redesign the system again.
Well, I think you hit it, Nathan, on the head, that, if we all recall the rollout of the MCOs, the initial, we lost MCOs, right? I mean, it was a bit of a, as people kind of understood what they took on here versus what they got, or what was contracted versus what we were doing, or I don't know what all the issues were, but I think that's kind of settled out a little bit. The MCOs are fairly stable now. So I would expect no different in an ASO rollout, personally.
I think there will obviously be pains, right? Growing pains and changes to be done. But when, and I've had this conversation with my staff several times, like when I would go to meetings and I would come back and say, what is it that we really believe in? Well, we believe in people getting services, and we believe in whole person care. And that's why we were so happy when the governor announced her intention to blend in the substance use policy and funding with mental health, because to really treat Iowans well. I think that's what we need.
Do we have, I mean, in my history on a board, I mean, the county government really traditionally had no involvement or limited involvement with substance use disorder policy and funding, correct?
Right.
So this is a new area for us, even we couldn't guess. I mean, it looks like when you said there were 19 districts, it's probably a fairly complex system as well.
Yes, that is true. It's 19 contracts. I mean, it's 19 separate providers, but their contracts are then for them to cover a certain number of counties. And so if you look at that map, it doesn't match up with any other map, right? We don't know yet what that's going to look like. My fear is that the ASO will just be told by HHS, administer these 19 contracts. My hope is HHS will say, administer these contracts and figure out truly integrated care, where a person can go to one location and receive treatment for substance use and mental health all at the same time. And there are places in Iowa who say they do that now, and we toured them. And what happens is there might be a licensed mental health practitioner at this end of the hall, and there's a certified addiction counselor at that end of the hall, and so they say they're co-occurring. I want to see one treatment plan that both professionals work on, and that we consider what the other's doing when we do it. And so that's our hope. I mean, that's what we've advocated for the last 2 years, and I don't want it to just be administer these contracts. I hope we have the opportunity to really integrate the care.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Thank you for taking the time and the effort.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions as we
We'll be
move
back.
forward.
Don't worry. One way or the other.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to item number 5 on the agenda today, items with Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furness. 5A is discussion and possible action to approve resolution 1014-2401, approval of the combined preliminary and final plat of Pine Grove Manor subdivision.
You should have everything in your package from this. Zoning Commission recommended approval of this combined preliminary final ag subdivision on October 4th. Essentially, it was just required because of the previous split in the quarter section. The owners, no longer husband and wife, are just settling in a state. And so there was one house to the north of the farmstead that needed a square lot squared off. And there was actually a lot of issues with the farmstead having kind of expanded ag buildings over the years. Some of them crossed parcel lines, ran right down through the middle of buildings. And so actually through the subdivision process, they've cleaned that up where the houses There's a house that doesn't have any farm buildings on it, and then the house with all the farmsteads, and then the crop ground is split off completely from the dairy farm operation. So it all remains zoned agricultural. It doesn't allow any additional housing to be built on the farm ground except if there was another farmer that bought it, through our farm exemption process. So it really is just kind of a lot of estate planning purposes, and actually does some good things cleaning up setbacks from property lines that weren't right when they continued to build ag buildings, so.
So I'd look for a motion.
So,
I got a
Sal,
motion
second.
a motion by Danny, second by Nathan. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Item B is discussion of possible action to approve resolution 10-14-2402, extending a temporary moratorium on the issuance of special use permits for commercial wind energy conversion systems.
As you might recall, our current moratorium on the special use permits for commercial wind energy projects is set to expire on October 20th. I mentioned this to you a couple years ago that I'd probably be recommending we extend that as we continue to work through our comprehensive plan process. I do expect good discussion on this and some more public feedback when we have the public hearings as we do the first rollout of the comp plan language. Like I said, there's a lot of things that are changing in this industry, and we want to get it right. We want public input on these types of things, and so I think it's appropriate. I have not had any developers call since we put this on that there's anybody like ready to put a project forward, so I think it's appropriate to extend this. We're proposing March 16th of 2025. We should be through our comp plan process and have it adopted by then, and then I can bring back some proposed changes in the language of our current wind energy ordinance as well, so.
Yeah, I know, there's a pretty contentious wind development going through Clinton County right now. I know they've been in a lot of been getting a tremendous amount of public input on it. So I think it's probably good for us to keep an eye on that and
I made
adhere
some
to the
comments
issues.
with some people up there that are on a commission that are studying that issue, so we're gonna be putting our heads together too. I'm gonna be kind of observing what they're doing, what some of the, cause like I said, there's just all kinds of information, you're just kind of sorting through what's emotional, what's factual. So it's a big project to undertake, amending this to get it right and try to balance the needs and desires for green energy projects, but also protect our infrastructure, protect neighboring property owners, and so we want to get it right, so I think we'll take some time.
Okay. So I accept the motion.
I would move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Kurt. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Thank you, Eric. Item C is discussion of possible action to approve an amended proposal and contract with TNT Tuck Pointing and Building Restoration LLC in the amount of $186,927 for mason repairs in Muscatine County Courthouse.
So last week, I brought you the proposal from TNT, which you approved. After that, Mike got to work on getting an AIA contract out to TNT, which took a few days to get some of that back. Got it to Jim. We started going through some of the details on the contract, and we found a few things that Jim wanted me to address. So it was late in the week as I'm getting this. Mike Nolan left town for a few days. So Brandon, Jim, and I met, emailed back and forth. One of the things, like, they had missed, the proposal did not include a payment and performance bond, which is actually required under state code for public projects of this size. So we asked that they include that, which it will cost about an extra $3,000 for that. So they've amended the proposal to include the cost for that P&B bond. We have more provisions in there. There was language in there that we had to have them removed as far as liens that aren't allowed for public buildings. Because Mike was gone, myself and Brandon and Jim worked with Mr. Smizer, and we did a lot of just pen and ink. It was minor little things Jim was okay with. I've sent it to him. So we've got the AI contract with the language, with some more of the stipulations that Jim wanted in there now. I am waiting on that P and P bond, so what I would recommend is that you approve this, and I will hold it until, I expect that today. He was getting to work on that Friday. We basically worked all day Friday on this just to get it into your packets and get the little notations made. In a perfect world, I'd say we would redraft this all and wait another week. But we're really at that juncture where we want to keep Renaissance moving. We have cold weather coming here in another month or so. I've talked to the architect, or the contractor. He's ready to mobilize. He thinks he'll be done by Thanksgiving. Does not anticipate any cold weather, material, mortar issues. He's got a plan to drape and protect, put a little heat in areas if that comes to it. But if we wait another week, I really feel like we will be delaying Renaissance. Like I said, this guy's ready to mobilize, get some work done so Renaissance can keep going, then they can switch places to stay out of each other's way. And so what you have is an AI contract with a few notations and marked up changes that he signed off on. And it's my recommendation we approve this, subject to me getting that P and P bond in hand today.
Yeah, I think that's a good, historic masonry, historic mortars are different than traditional mortars. I know if you watched the Kent reconstruction of the button factory down there, they had to stop their tuck pointing last fall as it got late, because if it gets below freezing, you're not allowed to tuck point anymore, so they can't do that. So I think we run a risk of delaying the prime on this contract if we don't get moving, so I think
the issue
it's.
is we have scaffolding that's erected already that Renaissance, they're gonna finish their roofing job even, with cold weather.
Yeah,
But if we hold them up for a mason, then we're gonna be paying additional, they're gonna ask us to pay for additional scaffolding. Or we're gonna have to re-erect in the spring, and then the cost is gonna be exponentially
Yeah.
higher. So it's not the way I would like to have an AI contract, but Jim had looked at it and said the few little details that were signed off on and amended by.
got amended with initials and all that, and,
That we're good there, so.
And we will get a clean copy at some point.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that makes sense.
But again, I will hold this pending your approval until we have the P and P bond in hand, which I expect today. We won't return it to them, executed,
Okay.
so.
I'll move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Nathan. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you, Eric, Brandon, Jim, for getting on that and working through those issues.
Just an update, the jail panel project, what, the guys, December?
Early December on the insulated panels is what he said.
He's saying he's still waiting on the panels, so, we're just kind of at a standstill until he gets all of his product to mobilize on that.
Is-
Not overly concerned, that's a project they can work on in cold weather. I mean,
Doesn't matter, and it
No.
isn't gonna affect our jail operations, and really the benefit is really mostly for the summer.
in the
and
summers
heat.
when it will see the big benefit, and actually it may be advantageous as we figure out where to stage now another mason, another contractor and employee parking, and so
Yeah.
it may actually be a blessing if we can get a few of these other things wrapped up, because we're kind of running out of space where to park everybody and
Okay,
going, so. That's all I got.
thanks, Eric. Okay, item number 6 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the October 7th, 2024 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
A motion by Scott, second by, was that Kurt? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Correspondence, did you have any correspondence, Scott?
I had nothing to know.
Nathan?
On, was it Wednesday or Thursday, I can't recall.
10-9, whatever day that was.
10-9, so Wednesday
Wednesday.
last week, Jeff and I met with, a gentleman from Prairie, the name's slipping my mind.
Prairie Institute.
Yeah, some Prairie Institute, kind of a think tank on energy and the like, along with, Ryan Streck from, MPW to discuss, power grid issues and related matters.
That it?
Yep.
Okay, I had a number of things. I had on the 8th, they had a the GMCCI Advocacy Committee, they're putting together questions for a candidate forum. They're having a members-only thing on the 24th or something. On the 8th, I met with a group from Muscatine to talk about port initiatives, or initiatives where the formation of a port is important to Muscatine and projects. On the 9th, I met again with Josh Rogers with that Prairie Institute, and this is related to, Ryan Streck was really, it was great, he came to the meeting. It was related to the proposed expansion of the MISO, which is the grid provider that MPW belongs to in the area, and the potential impacts and kind of what do we think about it as counties. And I think we gave them kind of what our typical landowner thoughts are and some of that. There is a proposal out by MISO. They have a tranche one. You can probably, I'm sure it's, I don't know if it's published or not. I think some of that stuff is a little bit quiet, what our power providers are doing, but it's all about bringing more high voltage. I think this is a 765 kV line. So, you know, Brian probably understands the implication of that on setbacks, I think like 500 or 600 feet. So you can't do much around them. But there is a proposal out. I don't believe it will affect Muscatine County on that one. So we had that on the 9th, and then again on the 10th. On the 9th, we had an initial meeting to discuss the ports of eastern Iowa, the counties that are coming together to put that together. So we're kind of going through some thoughts on the organization and how we're gonna do all that. So I've got some homework on that. And on the 10th, I attended an all-day meeting for the Corn Belt ports of Upper Mississippi, again, where Colonel St. Clair and his group put together they're trying to get the ports organized in this area to bring more visibility. So had a number of speakers and a number of initiatives, and it's kind of like drinking water out of a fire hose right at this point for me. So lots of stuff going. So that was it. Danny?
On the 10th, with the chamber, I attended the ribbon cutting event for the new sports dome representing the county. They wanted to everybody that participated in the donation, which the county gave the $400,000 out of our ARPA fund. So that's going to be a nice facility for the community, and it's supposed to be the biggest one in the state of Iowa. And they're going to, you know, not only for sporting events, it's going to be used for a lot of other community events, you know, that's really untold right now what all the uses will be, but it's going to be a nice addition for the county and city.
Okay, Kurt?
I just have an update. October 22nd, Muscatine County Fair Board annual meeting will be held at the fairgrounds at 6:30. So if anyone interested in attending,
Okay. How about community reports?
I had none.
On the 8th, I had the Chamber Economic Development Committee meeting. Every other meeting, every other month, we visit one of our companies in Muscatine, and they're pretty nice. We get a lot of additional information from them. This time we visited Hahn, so that was a nice event.
Good visit? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, I had none. Nathan?
I had none.
Scott?
I had no meetings either.
Okay. Okay, item number 9 are items with the administration office. 9A is discussion and possible action to approve resolution 10-14-2403, transferring funds from the general basic fund to the secondary roads fund.
Move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Scott. Any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
I will note, if you noticed, the large claims today that highly affected by these transfers to the different funds. Item B is discussion and possible action to approve resolution 10-14-2404, transferring funds from the rural services fund to the secondary roads fund.
So moved.
I have a motion by Kurt, second by Nathan. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Item C Discussion of possible action to approve Resolution 1014-2405, reallocating American Rescue Plan Act funds. Kayla, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
So approximately $1.5 million, ARPA dollars was allocated to the Deep Lake Park Campground project. And they have been working with a consultant to get some cost estimates and options for that. They haven't really gotten back any firm numbers on that. With us needing to sign a contract for construction by the end of this year, so in 2 months, we're getting really close to that timeline. We do have about 1.8 million of unspent capital project dollars at the courthouse roof project. So kind of what I'm proposing today is to reallocate the ARPA funds to that courthouse roof project since we already have contracts signed, we're gonna meet the deadlines, and then that would free up those capital project dollars to transfer over to the Deep Lakes Park project that doesn't have any time constraints, so that gives conservation enough time to work with and decide what they wanna do with that project without any time constraints.
Work through the plan a little bit more and get more concrete numbers. I think Kayla, Nancy had talked to me after the meeting last week and thought that might be an opportunity. I think it's a great idea. And we have them in our capital projects funds, and then we can expend those funds kind of at what makes sense for conservation board, so.
Yeah, sounds like a good plan.
Okay,
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan,
Second.
second by Scott. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Okay, item D, discussion of possible action authorizing the chair to execute contract documents for the Muscatine County Jail panel and door installation project.
This is the 2 projects that Mike Nolan had talked to you guys about, you had accepted bids on. Now we're just signing the contract.
This is just to do
documents
the
move
contract?
forward. Yep.
Okay,
I'll move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Kurt. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Item E is discussion possible action authorizing the chair to execute contract documents for the Muscatine County Deputies Quarters paving project.
I'll move.
A motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Do you have anything else, Nancy?
I do not.
Item 10 is receive comments from county employees. Any county employees that wishing to address the board on an item?
If I can, Jeff, I just
Yep.
want to announce. I'm
Yep.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to announce and remind the citizens and the voters that this Wednesday, October 16th, is the start of in-person early voting in the auditor's office. We're open 8 to 4:30, and that runs starting Wednesday through November 4th. And if you have any questions regarding elections and those dates and other deadlines, please give our office a call at 563-263-5821. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabby.
Thank you, Toby. Katie?
Brochure here for you, hot off the press. On Monday, we are going to be holding a kind of find out night about the campground project. So I appreciate you guys swapping the funds. We were dedicated towards achieving that goal, but this is gonna be a lot more comfortable goal for us to have a little bit of extra time. But on Monday, October 21st, 4:30 to 5:30 p.m., we're gonna be holding a kind of public information session at the Learning Center so that people can learn a little bit more about the campground project and our master plan updates to Deep Lakes Park. And so we've got these flyers that we've got set up. We're gonna be mailing out 200 of these to various community members, businesses, people that might want to bid on the project, all of that sort of stuff. And so they were going to go out today, but it's Columbus Day, so I don't think there's any mail today. So if the supervisors, more than 3 of you or more, are interested in coming, we might need Nancy to post this as a public meeting. I think it's going to be a public meeting for our conservation board to come early too. Our regular board meeting will be at 6 o'clock after this, but just want to make sure that if you're interested, otherwise I can give you all the updates next Monday, so.
And I don't think we'll have a public meeting issue if 3 or more of you attend, as long as you don't deliberate about the project.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's always the question about publication of public meetings. I think as long as there's even if there is a quorum there, as long as there's no deliberation about the project, we're typically okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Katie. Any other county employees wishing to address the board? And number 10 is receive comments from the public. Any member of the public wishing to address the board this morning? Seeing no one come forward, meeting is adjourned.